Core. Let me start with something that might bother you a little. If your child avoids discomfort at all costs, if they shut down quickly, if they panic over small problems, that's not sensitivity. That's a nervous system that was never trained. And before you get defensive, listen carefully. This isn't about bad parenting. It's about good intentions with bad results. Most parents today are deeply involved, present, caring, and emotionally available. On paper, that sounds perfect. But something strange has happened. Children are more protected than ever, and yet more anxious than ever. That contradiction should bother us. Because if protection was the answer, this generation should be the calmest, strongest, most confident one we've ever seen. But that's not what we're seeing. Instead, we're seeing kids who can't tolerate boredom. Kids who panic at failure. Kids who collapse under pressure that would have barely registered before. So the question isn't, do we love our children? Of course we do. The real question is, what are we protecting them from and what is that protection costing them? Here's the mistake. Said plainly, we started protecting children from struggle. Not danger, not real harm, just struggle. We rush in the moment, they're frustrated. We solve problems before they finish trying. We soften consequences because we don't want them upset. We think we're being kind. But what we're actually doing is teaching their nervous system that discomfort is a threat. Once the body learns that lesson, everything feels overwhelming. Think back for a moment. Not romantically, but honestly. You were bored. You were uncomfortable. You failed. You got scolded. You figured things out the hard way. Not because your parents were cruel, but because life was allowed to do its job. No one hovered over every feeling or intervened at the first sign of frustration. We're trusted to handle it. And because of that, you learned something without even realizing it. I can survive this. That belief is the foundation of confidence, not praise, not reassurance, not constant validation. It's the survival of difficulty. Now compare that to today. A child struggles, and we step in. A child is bored, we distract. A child is frustrated, we soothe immediately. So what lesson gets learned? Not, I can handle this. The lesson becomes, I can't handle this unless someone rescues me. That's not emotional safety. That's dependency. This is where people misunderstand the conversation. They hear struggle and think trauma. They hear discipline and think abuse. They hear consequences and think cruelty. That's not what this is. Struggle doesn't mean suffering. It means effort without immediate relief. Waiting, trying again, failing, and sitting with it, feeling frustrated and not being saved instantly. Those moments train the brain. When children face manageable stress and survive it, the brain learns regulation. When stress is removed too early, the brain never adapts. So later, when life gets hard, when relationships get complicated, when failure shows up uninvited, they don't feel challenged. They feel overwhelmed. That's why anxiety rises in environments that remove pressure. Not because kids are broken, but because pressure is how strength is built. Let's be honest about why this happened. It didn't come from laziness, it came from fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being too strict, fear of messing them up emotionally. So parents started overcorrecting, explaining everything, negotiating everything, soothing everything. But children don't need every emotion explained. They need to experience emotions and realize they pass. When frustration is immediately removed, the brain never learns patience. When discomfort is always softened, resilience never forms. So what's the solution? Not yelling, not going backwards, not becoming cold or distant. The solution is controlled struggle. Let children face problems that are age-appropriate and survivable. Let them feel frustrated without you instantly fixing it. Let them fail safely. Let boredom exist. Not forever, not harshly, but long enough for their nervous system to learn. This feeling 1T destroy me. That lesson is worth more than 1,000 motivational speeches. You don't build confidence by telling a child they're strong. Build it by letting them discover they are. Here S, a simple rule that changes everything. Don't remove discomfort just because you can. Pause, ask yourself, is this dangerous or just uncomfortable? If it's uncomfortable, that's training. That's growth. That's the moment strength is being built. And yes, they may cry. They may complain. It'll be uncomfortable for you, too. But short-term discomfort creates long-term stability. Endless comfort creates fragility. B. We need to talk about something that feels respectful, but quietly destroys authority. Over-explaining, negotiating, turning every instruction into a discussion. It sounds healthy. It sounds modern. It feels calm, rational, emotionally intelligent. And it completely confuses children. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Children don't feel safer when authority is endlessly explained. They feel safer when authority is clear. Somewhere along the way, parents started believing that every rule needs a justification, every boundary needs a debate, and every decision needs approval from the child. So instead of saying, "This is how it is," we say, "Let me explain why," again, and again, and again. What we don't realize is that children aren't hearing wisdom, they're hearing uncertainty. When rules are negotiable, authority feels optional. When authority feels optional, children feel responsible for decisions they're not ready to carry. That's not empowerment. That's pressure. Think about it, honestly. When a child argues back, asks why 10 times, pushes boundaries repeatedly, that's not curiosity. That's a child checking something very important. Are you in charge or am I? And when parents respond by explaining more, softening more, negotiating more, the answer becomes unclear. So the child keeps pushing. Not because they're disrespectful, but because clarity is missing. Here's the mistake plainly stated. We replaced leadership with conversation. We thought talking more would create understanding, but what it often creates is insecurity. Because children don't want to run the system. They want to know someone else. Look back. Most of us didn't grow up with long emotional explanations for every rule. 2. We didn't always like the rules. We didn't always agree with them, but we knew where the line was. That clarity did something powerful. It freed our mind. We didn't spend energy negotiating reality. We spent energy adapting to it. Today, many children live in constant negotiation. About bedtime, about screen time, about responsibility, about respect. So their brain never rests. Because when authority is unstable, the child has to stay alert. That constant alertness turns into anxiety. This is the part people miss. Over-explaining doesn't make children calmer. It makes them hyperaware. They start scanning tone, reading emotional shifts, testing reactions. Not because they're manipulative, because the structure is weak. And when structure is weak, the child has to compensate. That's too much for a developing mind. Another hard truth. Children don't need to agree with rules to feel secure. They need to trust that rules exist, consistently. Agreement comes later. Respect comes first. When parents explain every boundary like a courtroom argument, children learn something dangerous. If I argue well enough, reality will bend. That works at home. It does not work in life. Teachers won't negotiate grades. Employers won't negotiate deadlines. The world won't negotiate consequences. So, when children raised on constant explanation meet non-negotiable reality, they don't feel challenged, they feel attacked. They say life is unfair. They say people are mean. They say pressure is toxic. Not because it is, but because they were never trained to accept authority without emotional collapse. Now let's be clear. This is not about being harsh. This is not about yelling. This is not about silence or emotional distance. It's about decisiveness. A parent can be calm and firm at the same time. A simple rule changes everything. Explain once, then enforce. When you explain the same boundary repeatedly, you're not teaching understanding. You're teaching that the rule isn't solid. And children feel that immediately. Tears. What actually helps children feel safe? Predictability, consistency, follow through, not endless words. A child who knows this is the rule and it won't change relaxes. A child who senses maybe I can talk my way out of this stays tense, because they never know where the ground is. This is why children raised with clear authority often appear calmer, nods, because they're suppressed, because they're not carrying adult-level decision weight. They're allowed to be children. Now the solution, and this matters. You don't need to stop explaining completely. You need to stop over-explaining. Say what needs to be said. Answer genuine questions once. Then hold the boundary without emotional negotiation. Not coldly, not angrily, just calmly. 2. I understand you don't like it. This is still the rule. I hear you, and we're not changing it. That combination teaches something powerful. Your feelings are valid, and reality is stable. That is emotional safety, not constant agreement. Children raised this way may not always be happy in the moment, but they feel grounded. They know someone is steering the ship, Immels, and that's what allows them to grow strong without feeling alone. So here's the question you need to sit with. Are you explaining to teach? Or explaining because you're uncomfortable holding authority? Because children don't need perfect parents. They need confident ones. And confidence isn't loud. It's consistent. B. Let's talk about the shift that changed everything, and almost no one admits it. At some point, parenting stopped being about leadership and started being about fear. Not fear of danger. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being judged. Fear of emotionally damaging our children. So parents began second-guessing themselves. Every decision came with doubt. Every boundary came with guilt. Every consequence came with an apology. We didn't notice it happening because it felt like progress. More awareness, more sensitivity, more care, but what it quietly created was hesitation. And children feel hesitation immediately. When a parent hesitates, a child doesn't feel understood. They feel uncertain. Because authority that questions itself doesn't feel safe, it feels unstable. Here's the hard truth. Children don't need parents who are always right. They need parents who are sure enough to act, sure enough to hold a line, sure enough to stay calm when the child pushes back. Instead, many parents today explain, apologize, and soften before the child even reacts. Not because the child asked, but because the parent is already afraid of the reaction. Afraid of tears, afraid of anger, afraid of being seen as too much. So the boundary gets shaky before it even exists. And the child learns something dangerous. If I react strongly enough, the rules will change. That's not manipulation, that's adaptation. Children adapt to the environment we create. If emotional intensity moves authority, they will use emotional intensity. Again, not consciously, nervously, because now the system depends on their reaction. That's a heavy burden for a child. This is where parenting quietly flipped. Parents used to absorb emotional discomfort so children didn't have to. Now, parents avoid emotional discomfort, and children end up carrying it. Every meltdown becomes a crisis. Every protest becomes a negotiation. Every consequence becomes a debate. So the child stays in a state of alertness. They watch tone. They watch expressions. They test reactions. Not because they're difficult, because they're trying to understand who's in charge. And when the answer keeps changing, anxiety fills the gap. Let's say this clearly. Fear-based parenting doesn't look strict. It looks soft, it looks careful, it looks polite, it looks emotionally aware. But underneath it is one thing: lack of confidence. Not in love, in leadership. And children can survive a parent who makes mistakes. They struggle with a parent who is unsure because uncertainty forces the child to compensate. They become emotionally vigilant. They become sensitive to conflict. They become overwhelmed by pressure. Not because life is too hard, but because leadership is missing. Now, here's the uncomfortable part. Many parents believe they're being gentle. But gentleness without direction isn't gentle. It's confusing. Imagine being on a ship where the captain keeps asking passengers how they feel about the route. That's not democratic. That's terrifying. Children need someone to steer calmly, firmly, without panic. Tops. That's what used to happen naturally, not perfectly, but consistently. When parents stopped trusting themselves, children stopped trusting the structure. And when structure collapses, anxiety rushes in. This is why so many children today feel emotionally overloaded. They're carrying decisions, tensions, and uncertainties that were never meant for them. They're not weaker, they're overburdened. So, what's the correction? It's not going back. It's not becoming cold. It's not ignoring emotions. It's regaining confidence in leadership. You don't need to be flawless. You need to be steady. You need to decide and stay with the decision, even when it's uncomfortable. You need to allow a child to be upset without trying to erase the feeling. B. Because emotions are not emergencies. They're experiences. And when a child sees that you can handle their discomfort without panicking, they learn something powerful. I don't need to panic either. That's how regulation is learned. Not through words, through modeling. So, ask yourself this honestly. Are you leading from clarity or reacting from fear? Because children don't need parents who never doubt. They need parents who don't let doubt run the house. That difference shapes everything. Thank you for watching.